Hey, it's Saskia from Pretty Much Geeks. I have been playing The Last of Us Part 2 for the past 3 weeks, most evenings, and it has been driving me nuts not being able to talk about it with anyone. So finally, I get to, and I'm going to get straight to it. So when the game ended and the credits rolled, after clocking in at 30 hours of gameplay, my husband and I just kind of sat there in silence for a long time trying to process what we had just experienced. First, let me, without directly mentioning any, address the leaks and speculations floating around out there. They will not impact your enjoyment of the game. They do not spoil the ending. I have put a decent amount of time into reading up on everyone's claims and theories, and I can assure you that no one has it. If you were unlucky enough to happen upon the leaks or just couldn't avoid temptation, no judgment, please don't let that stop you from playing The Last of Us Part 2. The detail in The Last of Us Part 2 is insane. I should also let you know here that we did play the full game on an original PlayStation 4 without major issue. It ran completely smoothly 98% of the time, and I'm sure the one bit that it struggled will be fixed with the day one patch. They have obviously painstakingly thought through every set piece, every bit of dialogue, every interaction, and every enemy to create a completely unique gaming experience. Never before have characters in a game literally said what I was thinking or had just vocalized to my husband. It was actually pretty creepy. There was one part in particular where it happened 3 times in a row, word for word, and I was sure there was some creepy listening AI just adapting the game depending on whatever I said. So creepy. More than ever before, you feel like you're interacting with and experiencing a movie firsthand. Tiny, easily overlooked details often reference things yet to come, and stories of other lives lived within the universe are so beautifully painted through the decor choices and notes you find along the way. Characters are constantly reacting to their surroundings and terrain in subtle and super realistic ways. Did you just vault over a smashed window? You better believe Ellie just winced in pain. Running through wet mud or down a slope? Watch as Ellie loses her footing and skids along the way. Those are just a few examples of how much love and attention has gone into The Last of Us Part 2, and it really does stand out. All of those little details they just blew us away. Upgrading your weapon is so much cooler in Part 2. You actually get to see your character pull out the weapon, make the changes to the weapon on the crafting table, and then the weapon is actually forever changed. Even its inventory icon gets an upgrade, which for some reason was really cute. Combat has had many upgrades. It's several years on from when we last saw Ellie, and she has blossomed into a beautiful and ruthless killing machine. Melee combat is much more dynamic, with dodging becoming a large part of the experience, as well as making better use of bottles and bricks. Being able to pick up a bottle and attack an enemy with it gives combat a very realistic and more engaging feel. Also, allies are actually helpful now. Having someone fighting by your side and actually fighting well made the whole experience feel that little bit more realistic, although they do get in your way from time to time, which can be a little frustrating. The default health bar, however, is a lot harder to keep track of, as it's mostly in different shades of white, except for when you run concerningly low on health. You can fix this issue by changing the HUD settings. The listening ability is also more challenging in Part 2. You no longer get a crisp outline of enemies, instead you begin with a very vague and short-range white blur to indicate where the enemies are, which can of course be improved with skill upgrades. High contrast mode is intended to assist gameplay for the visually impaired, but in my opinion, it's a useful setting for a second playthrough of the game. It's a pretty awesome tool for the completionists out there. All items and things you can interact with, characters and enemies, are brightly highlighted against a monochrome world, making missing anything very near impossible. However, it isn't tolerable for long periods of time because as the characters are highlighted in blue, the Cypher 65 song will be looping eternally in your head. The way you traverse the world and access new areas has also had many new additions. Anyone with claustrophobia might struggle with some of these changes, as the game introduces a lot of squeezing through tight spaces. Both in sidling through narrow gaps in walls and commando crawling under vehicles and low structures, tight space gameplay is common and awesome. You can now go prone and crawl through tall grass as a new way to stealth attack enemies as well. Jumping and balancing are also introduced in many stressfully fun situations, which would more often than not lead to a genuine gasp of shock from yours truly. The ability to break windows is awesome and an essential mechanic which I often completely forgot about. There's no icon or anything to remind you that, hey, you can smash that window and get into the secret room. I actually hate to think how many areas I've completely missed due to forgetting to smash some glass. This may have been the same as in The Last of Us, but I found the infected sounds in The Last of Us Part 2 so much more unsettling. Many of them just sound like normal humans in intense amounts of pain. My natural inclination would always be, oh, someone's in trouble, but it would always be a bloody infected just living its life. Part 2, of course, introduces new infected, clearly having been dragged from the pits of hell with some tasty looking new growths. The worst of which being the stalkers, a slithery little swine of an infected that prefers to creep up on you rather than directly engage. It's not right. I think I even remember Joel saying in The Last of Us, the infected don't hide. Clearly Joel knows nothing, guys. The infected hide now, and it's the actual worst. Luckily, my trusty shotgun made quick work of those assholes. I hate stalkers, but I also love the new dynamic they add to the game, and hate it, but also love.
It was at this moment that he knew.
If you thought the infected were bad, wait till you meet the humans. This game is savage. Brutal. Many humans seem to have given up fighting their baser instincts, which makes many aspects of this game pretty sick and twisted.
Clip her wings.
Enemy encounters in general are far more terrifyingly realistic, and sometimes hilariously realistic. Each enemy has a unique look, and they even have their own names. So when a human enemy discovers their lifelong friend lying in a pool of blood,
She took Kevin out!
they'll call out their name in grief just to make you feel a little guilty about blowing both their arms off.
Alex!
As you may have already gathered from the state of play, there are two warring factions in Seattle. The Wolves are a highly trained and well-organised military-esque outfit, complete with dogs that love to sniff you out and savage you. However, as scary as they are, they've got nothing on the Seraphites. Finally, some religious fanatics. No apocalypse story is truly terrifying without them, and far out, these dudes are devout and disturbing. They come complete with an ominous catchphrase, seemingly mandatory braids, shaved heads, and I have it on good authority that they love a hanging just as much as I love a good cult. Sprinkled among the horror and brutal violence are so many breathtaking moments. The animation of light through the trees, vast beautiful landscapes, a colourful shrubbery, all perfectly and thoughtfully executed. Flower-covered buildings and overgrown streets are basically the Instagrammer's dream. I don't know why this is so important to me, but the water rendering is so freaking good in Part 2. Walking through puddles actually creates ripples this time round, which is definitely the least impressive bit of water animation in the game, but something about its absence and its predecessor always bugged me. As we neared the conclusion of the game, there were so many moments when I expected it to end, but it would just continue on. I couldn't help but compare the experience to being a committed viewer of The Walking Dead, which I am. Countless moments of begging it to please, for God's sake, just be over already. And then the next minute, I'm back on the hook, heart pumping, ready for whatever is round the corner. It's genuinely an emotionally exhausting game. No matter how often I hated the game, the beauty of it being that it wanted me to hate it in those moments, when it was over, I was absolutely stunned. It's a masterpiece, a work of art, and it has a lot to say about humanity, how we are, and how we can be better. I think a key takeaway is that we really need to ensure that therapists survive the apocalypse. A lot of drama could have been avoided if someone sensible had sat these characters down for a good debrief. P.S. Don't forget to use your trap mines. Much carnage, very good.